بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight we begin a series of 4 talks on the fitra, on the natural disposition of human beings, the inborn nature of human beings. I will be basing this on a book that I wrote, which is this book right here, called Al-Imanu Fitra, which is in Arabic. We don't have copies tonight, I'm very sorry. We should have copies tomorrow. And hopefully they'll be here before class. So if you'd like to get a copy, I hope you'll be able to do that. And as we go through our talk, I'm going to tell you what pages we're referring to. So that even tonight we'll do that. You don't have the book, but then if you do get the book, you can know that these are the pages that you could refer to. Okay? So, the fitra, the natural disposition of human beings. Inborn human nature. First of all, we'll just say a little bit about the word. We'll come back to talk about it more broadly tomorrow, inshallah. And actually, we'll just be elaborating on the concept of the fitra in each class. The fitra is, in Arabic, what we call ismul hay'a. Ismul hay'a, like qibla, like khilqa, like jilsa, rikba, and so forth. And ismul hay'a, as you know, is the way you do something or the way something is done. So qibla is the way we turn, the direction we turn. Khilqa is the way that a thing is created. Jilsa is the way we are sitting. So we have a particular jilsa right now. And we'll have another jilsa after that. Literally, the fitra refers to the special manner in which God creates things. And it's very important to understand that everything God creates has its own fitra. So a cat has a cat's fitra. A fish has a fish's fitra. An ant has the fitra of an ant. And to build its houses and to do the things it does is all part of its fitra. The bee is like that too. The bee has a particular type of fitra. When we say al-fitra, then the alif lam here is, as we would say in Arabic, lil-ahad. It's with special reference to something known, which means human fitra. So when we talk about al-fitra, we're talking about the human fitra that you and I all have. But you have to remember that everything out there that God created has its own fitra. Now, the fitra of the human being is a remarkable sign of God's mercy and His glory and the huge bounty that He bestowed on you and He bestowed on me. The human fitra is amazing beyond words. And this is what we'll be going into over these days. And all human beings have the same fitra. That's very important. Whether they are Chinese or African or Australian Aborigine or Lakota Sioux or whatever they may be, Arabs, Ajam, they all have the same fitra, the same basic fitra. Although your particular fitra is unique to you. So you have everything I have everything you have. But yours might be fashioned a little bit different. Just as you have a different height, a different weight, a different voice, but you still have a voice. You still speak. You understand language like I understand language. but you might use it better. Okay, so we have different fitras individually, but in general, they're all the same. They all have the same potentials and the same qualities. One of the most amazing things about the human fitra is that it is inborn with the knowledge of God. You have an inborn knowledge of God that is more precise and profound than the greatest theologian. And there's nothing correct that a great theologian could ever tell you about God, but that you will dig it out of yourself. It's already in there. We also have the ma'rifah, this knowledge of God as an individual experiential knowledge. That's part of your fitrah as well. Every one of us has the desire to worship God. In fact, it's not even a desire, it is a need. And that need in you and every human being is as strong as your need to eat when you're hungry, to drink when you're thirsty, and to do other natural needs. Okay, it's very, very strong. It's a drive. You have a drive to worship God. Human beings will always worship something. Okay, they're trying to worship God, but if they don't worship Him, they'll worship a sports car, or a woman, or a musician, or their house, or their career, or money. But we're all worshipers. And more important, perhaps, we have an inborn love of God, which is infinite and unquenchable. So, you want to love God, you'll find it in yourself. The more that you come to love God, the more you are getting in touch with your fitrah. And we have men and women in the present time and in the past, in our ummah and in other ummahs, who are just radiant embodiments of the love of God, aren't they? Like Rabi al-Adawiyah. Okay, you've got the same thing in you. And even if you happen to have had the great honor to keep the company of Rabi al-Adawiyah, the love that you would get for God would be from you. She would be priming the pump. With the incredible love that she has, she would be bringing out what is in you. So the human being then, this is something we'll come back to. We don't want to talk about it too much tonight. We have to get started. But we'll come back to it. But every single human being is, in Latin, Homo religiosus, is man, the religious animal. This is our nature. And we cannot escape this nature. Either we get good religion and become civilized people, and people that are safe and good for others and beneficial, or we have bad religion, because they're good and bad religions, and we can fall for both. Or I should say we can fall for the other one. We don't fall for good religion, we're blessed to have it. Even if we don't believe in God, and we don't believe in the hereafter, then you will see that human beings create secular alternatives to religion. They create something that takes the place of religion, which is essentially religious. Don't you see a little bit of that in the World Cup? Don't you see a little bit of that in the forms of communism that were so strong in the 20th century? The Soviet Union, Maoist China, Pol Pot, the cult of Lenin, the cult of Stalin, those are secular religions. Adolf Hitler in fascist Germany created a cult around himself, and he created a cult around the myth of the German race, because there's really no such thing. Germans are all mixed. Okay, but he created myth, and then he used all sorts of symbolism, a lot of it religious, to do that. That's a secular alternative to religion. So we're very religious, and we yearn for the infinite and the absolute. That means to say that you yearn for God, and God is infinite and absolute. And that's why if you don't find Him who will fill that void, then you will turn to something else. You'll make yourself an idol. It might be your bank account, it might be your portfolio, it might be your beautiful dress that you've got, or something else. Okay, but you will pour into that your need for the infinite and absolute, because you need that. This is what idolatry does. We were talking last night about the word fan. Like you have fans of music, fans of a particular movie star. The word fan originally means fanatic. But the word fanatic originally means idol worshiper. And that's because in Latin, these are words that come to us from the language of the Romans, Latin. The funds was the idol temple, the temple of the idol. And the person who served the funds was called fanaticus. Fanaticus. Or if it was a woman serving, for example, the temple of Juno, then she would be called fanatica. See, so the fanatic is the worshiper of the idol, and they become fanatic because they pour into this idol that need and quest and belief in the infinite and absolute, which can't be there, it can't hold it. So then they take these extreme positions. The next point that we want to make about the fitra, salams to all of you. It's nice to see your wonderful faces again. Some of you I'm seeing for the first time, but you all have wonderful faces, that's for sure. But the next thing that we want to say without going into great detail is that the fitra is everything about you that is the way it ought to be. So it's even the way you walk, the way you talk, the way we smile. Everything about us pertains to our fitra. So it's not just the knowledge of God, it's everything else. It's knowing how to use your thumb, how to pick up a glass like this with my thumb. All of that is fitra. All of that is fitra. And we'll begin with a hadith which is in your book on page 352. And this is the hadith that thou hast chosen the fitra. And in this hadith, I'm going to open up my book to 352. Otherwise I'm going to make some horrible mistakes and be embarrassed. I'm not a good memorizer, by the way. That's one of my problems. And here it is, I've got my marker there. Some of you have the book. I don't think anybody has the book with me. But maybe tomorrow you have books. Maybe. I hope so. But this is a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ tells us the story of Al-Isra and Mi'raj. And this is a narration from Al-Bukhari. So it's very authentic. And so he's saying, ثُمَّ أُتِيتُ بِإِنَاءٍ مِّنْ خَمْرٍ وَإِنَاءٍ مِّنْ لَبَنٍ وَإِنَاءٍ مِّنْ عَسَلٍ فَأَخَذْتُ اللَّبَنَ فَقَالَ لِي هِيَ الْفِطْرَةِ. So milk is the fitra. Okay, so it's very broad. هي الفطرة أنت عليها وأمتك. Okay, so we just begin with that. And again, we want to do that just to show you what you probably know already, and you're probably thinking about, that the fitrah is an extremely broad concept. So Imam al-Bukhari transmits, and this is a lengthy hadith about the Isra and Mi'raj, the night journey and the ascension, that the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then I was brought a bowl of wine, a bowl of milk, and a bowl of honey. And I chose the milk. He, Gabriel, said to me, it is the fitrah. It is the natural disposition. It is the inborn nature. You and your ummah are following it, or literally in Arabic, you're upon it, meaning you're following it completely. Okay? In a similar transmission, al-Bukhari transmits that Gabriel said to the Prophet, "Asabt al-fitra." You have attained, or you have gotten the fitrah. Muslim has, this hadith is also in Muslim, very authentic hadith. And Gabriel came to me with a bowl of wine and a bowl of milk. So he didn't mention the honey. This is the way the transmissions are. They add and they sometimes leave things out. I chose the milk, so Gabriel said, you have chosen the fitrah. Let's just talk a little bit about that. It is said that milk is the fitrah on the basis of at-tafa'ul al-hasan, on the basis of drawing good omens. Because milk is the first thing that entered your stomach. You see, milk is the first thing that entered your stomach. You got your mother's milk, or you got the nurse's milk. Therefore, it fatara al-ma'ida. Therefore, it opens up the stomach. As you know, fatara also has that meaning. And also the intestines. And one of the meanings of al-fitra as al-ibtida, the beginning of things, the way God began you. Thus, it also stands for the jibilla, the nature, upon which God created the children of Adam in the loins of Adam. And every child is born on the fitrah. Every child born is born on the fitrah. Milk was also the primary sustenance for the bodies of the desert Arabs. They lived off of milk. Sometimes they ate meat and sometimes they ate dates, but really they lived off of milk. And as a rule, milk was free of any harmful side effects or consequences. Thus, choice of milk is an indication of tawfiq, of success, of getting it right, and of sadad, doing the right thing. And that pertains to this great prophet of our ummah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then also to the ummah itself that follows him. So he took for them what was most in their maslahah, most in their best interest. Therefore they say this fitrah of the milk, which the Prophet chose, indicates the great guidance in store for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and for his ummah. Regarding the wine, the Prophet's turning away from it is referred to, Gabriel said in some transmissions of the hadith, it is truly so that if you had taken the wine, your ummah would have gone far astray. Your ummah would have gone far astray. لَغَوَتْ أُمَّتُكْ. This also means that the wine is not the fitrah. The milk is. It's healthy, it's good, it doesn't have bad side effects, but wine does. The wine of this earth. This indicates that wine is contrary to the fitrah, because it takes away certain things. It has certain side effects. In drunkenness, it removes the intellect. It also arouses human passions, often to the point that they can't be controlled. And it leads to fahsha, to obscenity, and to enmity, and to hatred. Thus, the original fitrah is one that leads to turning our backs on anything that leads to excessiveness or fasad. By the way, if I didn't say this, we'll talk for a long time. I hope you don't freeze. And that will be an hour and a half. And then we want to have 30 minutes of questions. I'm really bad at that, but we'll try to stick to it, okay? So when you have questions, feel free to write them down. Then again, one more point before we really get started. Just to emphasize, as we meant to emphasize with the milk, that the fitrah is a comprehensive, all-inclusive concept that pertains to you. So here, as you know, there are also bodily fitras. There are fitras that pertain to the body. Now again, just to repeat what we said a few minutes ago, the way you use your hands, the way you smile, the way you frown, the way you walk, the way you eat, the way you sit, all of these are fitrah. But the Prophet ﷺ also told us about bodily fitras, which are like those but a little bit different, because they are also sunnahs, but they are regarded to be primordial sunnahs that go back to the fitrah of human beings, based on the pure nature of the human being that the prophets are immediately led to follow. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So, this is on page 378. Will you let me look at my book? I don't really need to here, I don't think. I'll do it just as protection. Okay? I worked on this book for a pretty long time, by the way, and it's because of this book that you have Maimuna. Maimuna is my computer, okay? And that's because as I collected all this information, one of my dear friends, he said, I would meet with him. This was in Jeddah. I was teaching at King Abdulaziz University. He said, if you don't learn how to use a computer, you will never write this book. I didn't know anything about computers. That was, several years ago. So you might not have either. But I got introduced into computers to write the book, because that's the only way I could do it, to cut and paste. And, in the beginning I'm writing the pages in manuscript form. I've been taught how to write in the traditional way. You put the box, you don't leave any spaces. At the end you say sah, authentic. And then if you make a mistake, my God, what do? You have to go back and rewrite this. That's why my friend said, so good to see you. Assalamu alaikum. That if you don't learn how to use a computer, this book is not going to ever see the light. So just wanted to tell you that. So the Prophet said in Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and Ahmad and many others, and we give you that in the book. This is on page 378, and it goes to page 390. This is talking about bodily fitras. So the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is part of the fitrah to trim the mustache. Qas al-sharib. That's the hadith. In another transmission, it is part of the fitrah to shave the pubic region, halqul ana, to clip the fingernails and to trim the mustache. And there's more, right? So we have another hadith that adds that madmada, the swishing of water back and forth in your mouth as you make wudu, is fitra. Istinshaq is fitra, which is here meaning sniffing up the water and blowing it out. Istinthar and istinshaq and istinthar, but it's referred to as istinshaq. Siwak, the use of the toothstick. In fact, the First Nations of my country used to use the toothstick. And they use a particular tree, which is the black gum. They preferred the black gum tree. But siwak is an old, ancient tradition, and we would say that it's a prophetic sunnah. Going back to the fitra of the human being. Ghaslu al-barajim. Ghaslu al-barajim. Barajim are your finger joints, or it can be these crevices that we have in our hands. And it means in wudu, but it means also even when you wash your hands, you want to get the hands completely clean. The plucking of the underarms, natful ibd. Al-istihdad. Istihdad is to use hadid, to use iron. And that is a kinaya, which is a beautiful way of speaking, an indirect expression for halqul ana. Okay, so you can also call istihdad, the use of iron, the use of a razor. Circumcision. And most peoples of the world circumcise themselves. Most Africans circumcise themselves. Many other people. In fact, the unusual thing in history is not to do that. And that would be people like the Greeks and the Romans. They regarded it to be mutilation. And they have particular reasons why they did. They probably did it themselves before. But circumcision, al-intidah, sprinkling yourself, which is a kinaya for istinja, the use of water to clean ourselves after we make a call of nature. Okay, so these are bodily fitras, and we won't go into detail on them, but I just wanted to mention them here at the beginning. I know you probably think of them anyway. Just so that we make it clear how broad fitra is. It's not just the knowledge of God, and it's not just other types of amazing knowledge which is in our hearts or our brains, but it's even the most basic things that pertain to our bodies and the way that we live. Now we want to go in the book to pages 9 to 85, which I'm going to do. And we'll begin here with what is probably, the fundamental text on fitra, which is in Surah Rum, verses 30 to 30. I didn't say that right, did I? Surah 30, verse 30. That's what I meant to say. So this is when God says, عز وجل فأقم وجهك للدين حنيفا فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Very beautiful verse, 30:30. Surah Ar-Rum. Set thy face to the religion as a Hanif. How do we translate that word? It's very difficult. But the Hanif is the person that inclines to the truth and inclines away from falsehood. That is what a Hanif is. The person that has a natural disposition, and this is your natural disposition, to go to what is good and to leave what is bad, to follow what is true and to leave what is falsehood. That is Hanif. We'll talk about it more later. As you probably know just by thinking about it, the word Hanif in the Qur'an is always associated with the rejection of idolatry. It's always associated with the rejection of shirk and then the affirmation of Tawheed. So this is also right there at the root of Fitrah, but it's also at the core meaning of what it means to be Hanif, because in your inclining away from falsehood, you leave idolatry. And in your inclining towards the truth, you confirm the oneness of God. So set thy face to the religion as a Hanif. Some good translations don't even translate the word. They just say Hanif. In the primordial nature from God upon which he originated humankind. Okay, that's a translation, of course. There is no tabdeel of God's creation. The particular translation I'm using here says there is no altering of God's creation. The word altering here is probably not the best. Because what it means, there's no tabdeel. And you know, as most of you are Arabs, you know that tabdeel means to substitute it for something else. There's no badal. You won't find an alternative for it. Because we will see that the fitrah can be changed. Taghyir. You can do taghyir of the fitrah. But you can't do tabdeel. You can't utterly remove that nature that you have so that another nature is there instead. There is no tabdeel of God's creation. That is the upright religion. But most of humankind do not know. This means, أقم وجهك للدين. It means orient your whole being. Turn with your whole being. أقم وجهك. Turn your face, but it doesn't mean just point in that direction. It means give yourself entirely to that deen. Orient yourself and your whole being towards the worship and the obedience of God. This shows, as we'll see in many other verses and hadith, that the human being is originally created for religion. You are religious, you can't get around it. You just want to get the good religion. That's what you want to get. This is so important, and we'll come back to talk about this more and more. But human beings, whatever they do religiously, whether it's right or wrong. We're created that way. We are religious by nature. But also by nature, we are oriented towards and we are riveted to the true religion. The religion of Tawheed, the religion of goodness. It also then complements the verse that we have in Adh-Dhariyat 51:56, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That I did not create jinn and humankind save to worship me. Do jinn have a fitrah? What's the answer? Yes. Everything created has a fitrah. Angels have fitrahs too. Okay, and one of the things you'll see as we go through the fitrah text is that the fitrah of the jinn and your fitrah are very similar. Yours is different in many very important regards. Okay? Yours are different in many very important regards, but you and the jinn are quite similar. And most of the fitrah texts that refer to the fitrah in general are referring to the jinn and human beings. We'll see that as we go through that. Nothing else can be substituted for this underlying nature. لا تبديل لخلق. Nothing can be substituted. That might be better, in fact, as a translation. So that means that you can never give human beings a different nature. You can change it. So you can make a beautiful person, a happy person, a merciful person, ugly, unhappy, and unmerciful. And you can get them to do things that they would have never done in their fitrah, like tattoo their bodies. Okay, I mean, how do you feel about that tattoo once you wake up from your drunk? Right? Now for the rest of your life, you've got this stupid picture on your, forearms or on your back, or, oh my God, this is not natural. We can change that nature, but the fitrah is always there. What's the point of that? That means that you can always bring it back. You see, the fitrah can always be restored. No matter how far away people get from it, it is possible to bring them back. And this is what we have to do. We have to do it in ourselves, first of all, to restore our fitrahs and to tap into our fitrahs completely. And we do that by following our deen beautifully, inwardly and outwardly. Praying right, fasting right, making wudu correctly and so forth, but also having good character, having good thoughts, getting envy and rancor out of our hearts and so forth. All of that makes you pure, but all of that also puts you in touch with yourself. And then you've got a gold mine and a silver mind and a diamond mine that is just nothing but you. Okay, so let's say a little bit more about the verse. I should check my watch. Okay, we started at 7:30, so we've had about 30 minutes. Got another hour. Oh my God. Okay, so this verse is addressing whom? The best of all creation. Aqim wajhaka ya Rasulullah. Okay, so it's addressing the Prophet. But as our commentators state, and this is page, again, this is page 9 to 10 in your book, it addresses the Prophet as the Imam of the Ummah and the Imam of all humanity. So therefore, the application of it, and you didn't have any questions about this anyway, is universal and general. And it includes every one of us, and it includes, in fact, all humanity, ultimately. They're also called upon to do this. The command here, aqim wajhaka, what does that mean? Well, again, Arabic is an extremely rich language. You don't have to be told that. Arabic is extremely rich, extremely. But here they say that al-amr talab al-dawam. Okay, that here the command, and this is often the case with commands in the Qur'an, is calling for constance and perpetuity. Is that too big, those words? It means do it all the time, right? Like don't just do it once. So the command, we might think, we're not going to think that anyway, we're going to read it that way, but it's good to highlight this, that here, al-amr li-ajli talab al-dawam. It is to ask you to do this all the time. Every day, every moment, every prayer. Make this your life. And that's part of giving yourself over totally to the religion of God. Thus, the verse implies that now that matters have become clear, okay, because there's an address before that to the mushrikeen and to the Prophet's situation in Mecca, but now the truth of Islam has been made clear. When the Prophet began his message, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he has to establish that this is the truth. Okay, but as we get through the Meccan period, probably even less than halfway through, he's made it absolutely clear, with miracles, with verses, with teachings, and with everything else. So that now that there are no doubts in the mind of any sincere person about the truth of this, that is the truth of the oneness of God, now that that has been established, yet your enemies among the idolaters of Mecca have not followed that right guidance, but have instead followed their hawa and not huda. They followed their vain whims, their self-will. Okay, so don't be concerned about them. And don't be disappointed. And don't be discouraged. You do your obligation. You turn. That's the context of it. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ. So now you're going to you give yourself totally to this religion, and you and I also. Okay, because the truth has been made clear. Some people will accept it, some people will not. But in this case, we're talking about people who are not accepting it for reasons of intransigence. Not because they don't understand, they do understand. They just are willful, so don't worry about that. You just turn yourself to the religion completely. And therefore, commentators will say it means look neither to the right or the left. Don't look to the left or the right. Don't be, just get to work. But set your face to the religion, direct yourself fully to what God has directed you toward in order to obey Him and to fulfill your covenant with Him. Establish the deen, which is the meaning of iqamat al-wajh. Also, iqamat al-wajh means also establish the deen and do it with utter ikhlas, complete sincerity. Okay? فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. And do that as a hanif. We talked about this word before. Hanafa in Arabic means to incline. And as we said before, usually hanif in the Qur'an is employed in reference to Ibrahim. In general, it indicates one who inclines away from misguidance and towards belief in the oneness of God. To do this is to live in accord with our primordial nature. And this is the nature that all human beings have been given. As a hanif then means in a straight and upright manner, even standing upright, neither inclining nor adhering to past religions that have been altered or abrogated, or to your whim or anything else. Turn away from everything but this religion. Turn away from everything but the truth. Let nothing remain in your heart but that. Get everything else out of your heart. Even the sadness that you have had, O Prophet, because of the disobedience of the people that you love and that you want to guide. It's also said, we also talk about the grammar, and of course, what we see here is Hanifan is a nasb. I forgot I got a word for that several years ago. You can't call it accusative, it doesn't work in English. Well, you all know what nasb is, right? So we won't have to worry about that too much, but there's a really good English translation for that, but I couldn't find it tonight. But Hanifan is here hal, like do this in this particular situation, in this particular condition. But what's really important is that the word fitra is also in nasb, isn't it? Fitrata. It's not fitratu. That would be rafa'. It's in nasb, fitrata. Okay, so therefore the grammarians say that fitra is here a badal. And if you remember your Arabic grammar, which you maybe didn't love very much, since they stuffed it down your throat, I mean, it should have been the most beautiful thing you were studying. but often we have teachers who know how to make it really ugly. But, you know, the bedel is what we call in English apposition. In English, we don't use apposition very much. But you say, Elizabeth the Queen of England. Okay, so Elizabeth is my subject. Queen of England is apposition. You could take Queen of England and put it in Elizabeth, it would be the same thing. Or Elizabeth and put it in Queen of England, it would be the same thing. So that's a bedel, a bedel. Arabic uses it all the time. Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman is bedel from Allah. Ar-Rahim is bedel from Allah. Arabic is filled with bedel, especially in the Quran, especially in the Hadith. But it is said here that this is bedel al-ishtimal. Bedel al-ishtimal. Which is to say that it is the inclusive apposition. I hope that doesn't give you a headache. Okay, but what it means is that fitra completely includes Hanif. That's what's important. See, Hanifan, fitrat Allah. See, when you turn your face to this religion as a Hanif, then that will be fitrat Allah. And fitrat Allah will be that. That's what Badr al-Ishtimal means. So therefore, Hanif and Fitra, they become identical. Do you see that? They become identical. They're absolutely and inseparably linked with each other. Hanif then means to avoid shirk and to affirm tawheed, and Fitra means that too. See, that's one of the things you get. Whatever Hanif means, Fitra also means that. And whatever Fitra means, it includes Hanif as well. Okay, so that's one view. And another view, and these are not contradictions, you can take them all if you want, is that it is mansubun ala al-ighra. Ighra. You know what ighra is. Make you want to do something, right? Get you convinced to do something. You can use ighra in really good ways, like to make you want to eat a nice cake. And you can use it in bad ways too, you know that. But ighra is the opposite of tahdhir in this case. So I say al-asad, al-asad, al-asada, al-asada in nasb. It means beware of the lion, beware of the lion. Right? That's what it would mean to a desert Arab anyway, 1,500 years ago. But what this means here is like as-sidqa, as-sidqa. As-sidqa, as-sidqa means you've got to be honest, you've got to be honest. So that's ighra, that's trying to get you to do that thing. So in this case then, it's encouraging us in the strongest possible terms to hold to the fitrah of Allah. And indicating that this is something really good for you. This is something really praiseworthy. I hope you're not freezing. I hope you're not freezing. Okay. It's a little bit cold here in Egypt tonight. But I'm from Chicago, so to me it's like a cool summer evening. Now another thing that we want to talk about is fitrat Allah. It doesn't say fitra, right? It says fitrat Allah. And so what does that mean? The fitra of God. Of course, it doesn't mean that God has a fitra, just like Baytullah doesn't mean that he has a house, or Sayfullah doesn't mean that he is that sword or that he has a sword. But Sayfullah means Sayfun Mamduh, Sayfun Majid, Sayfun Azim, Fi Sabilillah. Baytullah means you know what? Glorious house. So that's why also Fitrat Allah means Fitra Mahmuda, Fitra Azima, Fitra Majida, Majida. See, this is very important, you know, that this, to grasp that. It's easy for you to do, and you probably do it naturally, because you're Arabs. Fitrat Allah. So this also means that the fitra is extremely good. extremely good. And this is what we'll see. The fitra is perfect. The fitra is incredible. God gave you the most beautiful gift you can ever imagine. And everything about that fitra is worthy of the highest praise. And because it's worthy of the highest praise, it's also worthy of gratitude and thankfulness, isn't it? And also of doing it, living according with it. We'll see you. Okay? And then also it says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. So here you notice that it's using the harf ala, on, which is not necessarily the way it had to be. The Quran uses these huruf very amazingly. So the harf ala is a special figure of speech in Arabic here to indicate a tamakkun at-tam, to indicate that God made this fitra absolutely you. And He made you absolutely this fitra. He didn't like give you part of it. Maybe He left out something. It's not like on the side. Some people have it strong, some have it weak. See, he made all the people upon this fitra. Meaning they all have it completely. They all have it with complete tamakkun and mulabasa. And they say it indicates complete tamakkun of mulabasati as-sifati bil-mawsuf. You know that the sifa, the attribute, is completely characteristic of the thing described, not partially. And you know yourself that you could say certain things about people that are partially true. They partially describe them, but not completely. But this completely describes us. We completely have this fitrah. This means that the fitrah is a quality in us that is absolutely inseparable from us. It is completely established in us. It is ingrained in us. And again, in the most praiseworthy and complete of ways, because it is fitratullah, like Baytullah, or Sayfullah, or Deenullah. This indicates then, as we've said now several times, that human beings are perfectly created, and so are the jinn. Because they also have their fitras like that as well. And this indicates that the human being is created with intellects, dispositions that are free of everything that goes against the fitrah, such as false religion, such as blameworthy customs, such as not circumcising. You're not born circumcised, that has to be done. But you have a natural disposition to do that to your child, to get that done. Okay? And we are also free of all cultural conventions that are ugly, even though people will develop them. Therefore, all types of misguidance that appear in human beings, and all types of inhumanity that appear in human beings and in their societies, are not the result of their natures, but they are the result of deviations in the societies that come about through improper nurturing, reception, teaching, and so forth, and becoming accustomed to things that are not ours. Okay, so let's move on. Now we want to move on to a hadith which is in page 241 to 265. 241. Okay, here it is. And this is a hadith transmitted in Muslim and transmitted in other collections. And it is a hadith Qudsi. It is a sacred hadith or holy hadith in which, as you know, God, the Prophet is telling us sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what God says, right? So he is narrating about God, but it's not revelation like the Quran. So this is a hadith Qudsi. And in this hadith, the Prophet said, "Ala inna Rabbi amarani an u'allimakum ma jahiltum mimma 'allamani yawmi hadha kullu malin nahaltuhu 'abdan halal." Now this is a hadith Qudsi, because those are the words of God. Kullu malin nahaltuhu 'abdan halal. وإني خلقت عبادي حنفاء كلهم إني خلقت عبادي حنفاء كلهم وإنهم أتتهم الشياطين فاجتالتهم عن دينهم وحرمت عليهم ما أحللت لهم وأمرتهم أن يشركوا وأمرتهم I'm so sorry وأمرتهم أن يشركوا بي ما لم أنزل به سلطانا. Okay, so I wanted to make this the first hadith we looked at because it's one of the most specific. So Muslim has 4 transmissions of the hadith. We talk about that in the book. I try to give you all the transmissions I could find. Muslim transmits, again, let's translate this into English. How do you translate Allah? I'm going to say yay, and that's, maybe you can do better, okay? But it's old biblical type of language. Yay, that doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work, okay, but I don't know what to say. All right, so, yea, truly my Lord has commanded me to teach you what you were ignorant of regarding what he has taught me on this day of mine. God says, okay, that's in brackets here because it's not in the hadith, all the wealth I have given a servant is lawful. I made all wealth I gave them lawful. The main reference here, we'll talk about it a little bit more perhaps in a minute, is really about camels and cattle and things like that. And the reference is to what the pre-Islamic Arabs would do when they would make certain camels forbidden and certain animals forbidden, right? So that's what it's referring to. And the basic meaning of mal for the Arabs is going to be camels. It's going to be camels. And I created my servants as hanifs. Again, inclining toward the truth and away from falsehood, all of them. That's why I like it, because it makes it clear, all of them are hanifs. But then the satanic demons came to them and diverted them, فَاجْتَلَتْهُمْ, away from their religion. And they declared to be forbidden what I had made halal for them, such as a certain type of camel, born at a particular time or whatever. That's the primary reference here.